Thanks. And I host Products That Count in 2019. We're very lucky, actually, to have our previous host here today, too, Rendier. He was a host last year. So he's the one who sort of got this whole thing started. So grab him afterwards. So Products That Count, for those who are new, is a community of product managers, about 20,000 product managers around the world. And the main event that we host is sort of the speaker series, 5 of these throughout the United States, San Francisco, San Jose, Austin, Seattle, and New York. And they're monthly, and we bring in great speakers to sort of share what they know about building great products. And so the first thing I wanted to do tonight was to thank Adobe for hosting us in this great space and providing pizza and beer. And so I'd like to invite Meredith up to say a few words.
Hi, folks. My name is Meredith. I'm a product manager on the Photoshop team. I'm actually a stand-in for Pam Clark, who usually is the Adobe liaison. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for being here. If we run out of pizza, I'm happy to order more. There's beer in the bag, and then right under the beer, that's where you're going to find the 2 trash cans. Restrooms are right around the corner. On behalf of Pam usually stands up here and says Photoshop is hiring, but unfortunately Photoshop is not hiring right now. But Adobe is hiring, and if you go to photoshopishiring.com, there's a link to Adobe hiring, so you could go in. It might be early. I might be skipping to the shout out part.
No.
Yeah. So, and Pam, usually, if you have any questions about Photoshop product management or digital imaging product management, it's Pam, P-A-M, @adobe.com. You can also send me a message. I'm Meredith @adobe.com, MEREDITH, which is way harder than Pam @adobe.com. So email Pam. She'll be back in a few days. So thanks, everyone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And the other thing to call out, again, and thanks to Adobe, is please make sure just the pizza and plates and cups and whatever, just make sure to dispose of those, on your way out. Cool. And so I'm going to give a little bit of an overview as to what's going to come today. So we have Archie here. We're going to hear from him and hopefully some great insights. Then after the talk, so please save all of your questions until after the presentation itself. And then we'll actually also make sure you pull out your phone actually at the end of the Q&As, because we'll be sending an NPS survey. So please provide feedback. This helps Archie get great feedback, as well as for us to continue bringing in great speakers and improving this program. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Archie. So I'm very happy to welcome him to Products That Count tonight. He is currently a product lead at Lyft, and previously was, I think, at Udemy for over 7 years.
7.5 years.
7.5 years. And as I understand, has started as the 10th employee, and then most recently was at SVP of product there, and helping to grow Udemy into what it is today. And so very, very looking forward to what he has to share. Please join me in welcoming him. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction. Do you guys all hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So talk tonight, a little bit about dealing with chaos, or basically how to lead when everything feels like it might be falling apart. I already heard from some of you that, hey, you might be going through some situations where things are a little chaotic, and how do you actually deal with that change? Because often, I love all the product talks, but often it can feel like sitting there like, wow, that's a really amazing product process. Everybody feels like they're marching in lockstep. When they're building this product and they talk about going through the perfect product development process. I sometimes find myself sitting there like, yeah, well, that sounds really nice, but I think we all kind of know that's not usually how products get made. It's a little more complicated than sometimes like to make it seem. So a little reality check. Often we're dealing with complex situations, right? That might be an org change, a new CEO, an engineering director who quits, a marketing stakeholder you just can't quite get on the same page, and it's kind of a pain in your side. How do you deal with that, and how do you stay in control, kind of lead your team through those changes? So let me tell you a little story to kind of just give you some context on where some of this experiences are coming from and some of the different situations that I'll be kind of referring to throughout the talk. So skiing in Utah, beautiful, on vacation, great. Get a text. Text on the phone. It turns out to be the chairman of the board from Udemy. Say, hey, can you give me a call? It's a little weird. Like usually don't get that type of text, but okay. So I go into the lodge thinking, okay, maybe like good friends, maybe something going on. Says, okay, we actually just fired the CEO. And oh, okay, interesting, Aaron. That's some news. So how do we want to handle that? How do you want to go through the messaging? Well, starting on Monday, and this is on a Friday. So okay, how do you deal with that type of change? Right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about is referring to some of those stories and hopefully give you a little context on types of change. Now, changes like that aren't always that extreme or kind of that quite that again, extreme is probably the best word. But we all face these smaller changes, right, day to day. So what do you actually do? And as a PM, as a product leader, your job is to lead your team through that change, right? That could be your product team itself, your PMs on your team, it could be your cross-functional partners, engineering, design. It really actually comes down to you taking responsibility of that and helping your team get through that change. So it wouldn't be a normal product talk. We didn't have a little, graph, really terrible set of metrics here. But if you look at what happens typically after a change, right? Usually what happens is big change, productivity goes to not quite zero, but it goes pretty low, right? Everybody's a little bit thrown off. And it takes a while for, in a normal situation, for the productivity and the outcomes to start to get back to where it was before. So what's your goal as a leader, as a PM? Really to change the slope of that line and get your team back to shipping, doing really solid work for customers in the business as quickly as you can. So what does that look like? So very 4 basic steps. Own it, communicate it, teach it to your team, and then ultimately live kind of with change. How do you own it? So for those of you who don't know, I love Stephen Covey talking about different ways you can spend your time, right? You can spend your time on things you actually control. Right? What do I actually control in my day-to-day? You can then spend your time circle of influence. What can I kind of influence, but I don't directly control? And you can then spend your time in circle of concern, right? What a lot of people end up doing is spending a lot of time out here, particularly when there's a lot of change. You can picture this, sitting around maybe in a meeting room, gossiping about why this CEO got let go, why this reorg is going. But the fact is, you can't actually control any of that. So is it good use of your time? Probably not, particularly if you're a leader. Instead, thinking about when you're going through those changes and you hear that moment, what do you actually control? Right? And what you actually control is usually your mental state, your body language, your timeliness, your communication, your actual physical presence. Right? These are the only things, or just maybe a couple other things. These are the main things that you actually control in your day. So when you're going through that change, particularly as a leader, really thinking through how do I make sure I stay in control of the things that I actually have power over. What can I influence? Right? You can influence, let's say, that situation with the new CEO coming in. I can influence what he or she does. I can influence fellow VPs. I can influence my peers. I can influence them, but I can't actually control. Right? But I can influence. I can influence what my team thinks about the change. I can't control what they think about the change, but I can influence how they feel about it. What's my circle of concern? Well, not circle of concern. My circle of nothing. Basically, gossip about the change. Right? I would say this is the one thing when change is going on, and you as a leader, reminding your team, gossiping about it doesn't actually do anything. And what actually happens? Does my entire team quit? Do I get fired? Does the company fail and go bankrupt and we all have to get new jobs? But you can't actually control any of that. So usually not useful spending a ton of time thinking about this. So when you're thinking about change and going through it, really important to spend as much of your energy as possible on that circle of control, and really kind of grounding yourself there. Communicate it. This is a funny one because one of the things you actually do control is actually how you talk about it with your team. So my one slide with a ton of text on it. Sorry for that. A little story. We had an issue with an office in Dublin, right? A lot of great folks, but realized we had some parts of product and engineering over there, some parts in San Francisco. Collaboration wasn't as great as it could be between business teams and that office, so we needed to move kind of the central power to San Francisco. That was going to be a big change for these folks in Dublin. So one of the things that we almost got on a flight to go tell this team without actually writing down exactly what we were going to do. And it was funny, we actually convened together in a meeting, actually realized, holy crap, you think we're telling this person this. I think I'm telling this person that. This is going to end up in a complete and utter disaster. I've seen this a lot. You think about how do you communicate change? Everybody kind of thinks they're aligned, but there's a lot of details to work through. What do you do instead? Started to obviously do this. Just writing down some very simple answers. In writing, very important. What's happening and why? Give context. And again, not gossip about what's going on. Identify the impacted groups, like who actually physically is going to be impacted by this event. Establish an overall timeline of in who is doing what when. When are key people finding out? When is a team meeting happening? When is an email going out? Is there a company announcement? I know folks have been through some big changes. Some of these things can actually slip a little bit and not always be as crisp as we would like. So when dealing with that change, really getting specific and aligned, particularly when you know the stakes are going to be high. Draft those key messages for each audience, identify those key concerns, written FAQ, and identify key influencers. One of the things that, another fun story, basically we're announcing, usually about 6 months before I left, big org change for the CEO I just mentioned. And night before, CTO decides to resign. Oh, wow. Okay, it's a little different. So we get together actually up until like 2 a.m, actually write down exactly what's happening with all the engineering directors, PM directors, making sure that folks totally get it and are locked and ready to go into that next day. So when you're going through change with your team, are you really aligned and making sure that's written down in there? Practice. Simulate real people. And one of the best